Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us for this short webinar entitled Garbage In, Garbage Out, Blind Trust in AI Risks Your People and Brings Liability. I'm Gareth Throckmorton, the Chief Operating Officer of TalentTelligent, and I'm so thankful that you were willing to spend 30 minutes of your day with us as we talk about a topic that, in my opinion, as I've scanned the AI marketplace, obviously specific to talent management, is one that is seldom talked about in great detail. And so for the next 30 minutes, we're going to start at 30,000 feet. We're actually going to go away from artificial intelligence to begin, and then we're going to dive deeper and deeper and deeper into this topic. So to get started, what I'd love for us to consider is the importance of technological innovation, the goals that we set out to achieve when we innovate as human beings and we create new solutions to solve potentially age-old problems. And so the first one that I want us to think about, just to frame our mindset correctly on this topic, is the washing and drying machine. Your washer and dryer are an integral part of your life. We all know that, and certainly help us to be efficient and productive in the way that we manage our day-to-day household duties. Now, every technology that's been created always has an unintended impact, right? So when we think about this technology, which is probably one you haven't reflected on too often, we have to consider before the washing machine and the dryer were created, this actual task of completing laundry was a shared task. It was a family task. Kids were involved, parents were involved, neighbors were involved, grandparents, cousins. So it took almost quite literally a village to keep up with the laundry piece of our lives. So therefore, when this technology was created, it solved the big problem, the inefficiency and the lack of productivity that we could be doing other things with during that time. And it had an unintended consequence. And that consequence was it decreased the social norm that had been created where social capital got built between families and friends and neighbors and generations. So again, I'm not contending we should go back in time. I do not want to do that, but there was an unintended impact to this new technology. Here's another one. When you see this person running across the screen, I almost guarantee you hear a noise in your mind's eye, which is the dial-up tone of AOL coming online in the late 90s. Obviously, the internet has disrupted and changed our way of life in so many ways we can barely count them. It's likely that even this morning you didn't make it through breakfast without utilizing the internet. Right? And so we can list a long degree of unintended consequences of the influx of the internet. First, obviously, there's lots of good. We were able to market goods and services, connect with people across the world, and reach markets in a way that we'd never had before. We could start talking with people in different states, in different countries, in different languages, right, in a way that was almost impossible before. But has the internet overreached? To my previous point, we can't get through breakfast without leveraging it. Where does work end and life begin? How do we manage this resource with our kids? What's enough time and exposure? What's too much time and too much exposure? So a lot of unintended consequences that we have to grapple with. So as we zoom a little bit closer to this topic of artificial intelligence, I think one of the interesting things is that although it feels very new, the term in and of itself was coined all the way back in 1956. The first chatbot was actually created in 1964, which we can imagine the room that held the computer that allowed this to happen was quite large. But this technology has been one that's been shaping and forming all the way into 2022 when it became really on our radar because it was publicly accessible to be able to interact with ChatGPT and Gemini and those like. Now, that being said, the hype cycle and the speed at which this is occurring is probably unlike anything we ever saw. Again, let's take you back to the AOL example of the dial-up. It was just even taking time to get us online, right? Here, within milliseconds, we're able to connect with open systems of artificial intelligence And frankly, by the time you've understood it, it shifts and changes, and the features and forms have moved, 2 weeks later. So today, the point of our conversation is to zoom into talent management, to think about hidden risks that might be occurring when it comes to AI coaches, interventions in talent management, how the data is really important, right? And this topic of garbage in, garbage out. And then we're going to challenge you at the end to sort of shift your mindset around this topic and leave you with some questions to be asking as you vet different solutions. So first and foremost, let's just think about AI in our space in and of itself. The first place predominantly that we saw AI show up was in recruitment. We all know the talent acquisition side of the house had a lot of administrative tasks and steps involved. And so AI, being a productivity answer, can automate and take some of those tasks off of us in obvious and powerful ways. Onboarding, performance management, certainly we've seen it there. Talent management for a while was certainly lagging in development, but boy, is it catching up with new tools every single week for us to consider. This, I think, is really interesting, a little pulse check on the state of AI adoption by our function. So this is a survey done with executives, right? And you can see 24% of HR executives say that they are currently using AI. It's fully deployed inside their function, with 42% experimenting and piloting, meaning it's coming very soon. 30% saying we're not using it right now, but we're looking at options for what we're going to do in the next 3 years, which I would probably argue is probably more like 12 to 18 months. And only 4% aren't even considering it, right? I imagine if we went back 12 months, we would have seen this chart look very, very, very different. Probably many more saying we're not using it, but we're looking in the next 3 years, and they've adopted actually probably quite quickly. So again, back to this framing, when we think about technological revolutions, we've encountered them before. They've had unintended consequences, right, that we grapple with down the road. This is a little unique in terms of the speed at which it is advancing. So this horse is out of the barn. Trying to stop AI is like holding your hands up in front of a tsunami and hoping that the waves will listen to you. It just will not happen. So my encouragement here is that we have to sit for a moment and think about the unintended consequences that AI coaches could create as talent management professionals. So to do so, let's again start from the learner, the user's experience, and work our way backwards. And this is really the fork in the road moment for our learners, let's call them our teammates, that we serve from an HR perspective. It's the control V, the copy paste. So there's two roads I'll take us down here. The first is the literal copy paste. It's craft an email for me to send to my direct report to help create their performance goals for the year. Copy paste, put it in an email, move. Put it in our HRS and move, right? Be able to take my coaching notes, give me feedback, and tell me what I should do differently the next time that I need to come into this performance review. Copy paste. Right. The other copy paste is a little different, which is we get guidance from the system that then we copy paste into our behavioral choices. Right. I'm presenting to the senior leadership team, and I need to persuade, motivate, and motivate them to make a decision that aligns with my goals. How can I best show up? In essence, I'm copying and pasting that guidance into the way that I behave. So there's risk inherent in both of those things. And I'll give you an example of the true copy paste here, which is just on October 7th, Deloitte submitted a report, or actually it was found that they had submitted a report to the Australian government, the Department of Employment and Workplace Relations. And in it, it was littered with falsified attributions to non-existent reports from law and software engineer experts. Lo and behold, how did that happen? Through OpenAI, right? To date, they've had to refund $290,000. That's the first payment. There'll be another one that comes down the road. Not a big financial sort of blow to Deloitte, as we know, but reputational risk and harm. That's a different equation to put a number to at this point. So how does this happen? This happens, I would contend, because our teammates focus on the output. They focus on the moment of reading and control V to either documents or to their behavior. But Our open systems always have the asterisk, hey, heads up, AI can make mistakes. You need to check for important information. And we could probably not stretch too far to say 90-95% of people aren't really checking. They're trusting that what they're receiving is true. The reason is that on the right-hand side of this true garbage in, garbage out graphic here is that they receive hallucinated outputs, but the actual output is false, but very confident. So when they read it, it passes, we could argue, the smell test. Yeah, this seems right. It smells right? It looks right. But is it true and is it accurate? So these models are hallucinating. They're hallucinating because they're built, the output comes from a model, right, that has bias inherent in it. There's ineffective, what's called fine-tuning that occurs there, and that's fine-tuning is ineffective because of the data problem on the backside. The data is inaccurate, if it's incomplete, if it's misaligned, if it's biased, it doesn't matter the processes we put on top of it. The output risks hallucination. So before we think that I'm blowing this out of proportion, let's look and see, are hallucination risks real? So this is as October 1st. This is the hallucination rates across a variety of different large language models and open AI systems that are varying from 17 to 45%. So 17 to 45% of the time, depending on what we're using, we're seeing that the answer is false but confident, right? So yes, hallucinations are real, and this challenge for us as talent management professionals is that we need to assume learners cannot discern what is true from what is false. So again, let's back ourselves up. If the output is hallucinating and the model might have bias that's inherent in it, what is the data source? So when we look at this research from SEMrush, the top domains cited by LLMs, meaning what are they pulling from to answer my question? There are places like Reddit, Wikipedia, crowdsourced information. Could be true, could be false, right? There are places, certainly Google, right? Facebook, Instagram, right? LinkedIn hit this list. So you can see this specifically. So again, this is the data source behind many, if not most, of the AI coaching interventions that are rolling out into the marketplace right now that are purported to just have enough safeguards in place to not provide misguided judgment. So let's imagine this from a different perspective when we're trying to dream up unintended consequences. Imagine I gave you a special project and it was very simple. Go find a panel of executive coaches, bring their bios, right? Because we're going to assign them to the C-suite. C-suite needs help on their own individual development, their development as a team, and the ability to build bench strength through succession planning practices. They want to find assignments to give to people to stretch the knowledge, skills, and attributes that they're developing so that they can move up in their capabilities. And imagine if you ran away, came back, and brought bios to your C-suite, and you looked at the bios and they zoomed down to the education and the certifications, the licenses, the training background and experience, and all it said was, I read the open internet. Your credibility would take a blow, and certainly those coaches are probably not going to get hired, right? So again, that sounds like a really silly example, but when we purchase and deploy AI interventions for development, and behind the scenes of that is data that just comes from the open internet, that's really, in essence, what we are doing. So here's a tangible example of some of the big risks and liabilities that we know are happening in the marketplace right now. There's two large lawsuits, one with Workday and one with SiriusXM Radio, and this is in the talent acquisition space, where in essence AI was used in the applicant recommendation system, scanning, filtering, elevating different profiles, and they were creating or have been purported to create disparate impact. So obviously the lawsuit's still going. A similar thing with SiriusXM Radio. They were discriminating, it seems, against candidates based on race, right? So we've moved really quickly, and there's risks and liabilities that are inherent that we haven't quite vetted out. If we look down into performance and succession assessment, if you have bias in the algorithms, that leads to flawed talent signals, right? If the content is unvalidated, you will get wrong guidance, right? Because the open internet shouldn't be our coach. We're already seeing the EEOC start to step in and warn about algorithmic decision making and what risks that may pose to your organization. We're seeing some AI tool use specifically outlawed in some states in our world of talent. All right, so we're early in this process, but it's moving very quickly, right? And it is ripe with risk. So the decision that we believe lies with HR is back to our professional standards. When we sign up to be an HR professional, when we get our SHRM certification, right, there are ethics and standards that we all aim to uphold, right? To work with fidelity, to care for employees, their best interests, their best needs, to be able to fuel their capabilities and bring meaning and purpose into their life. So the question is, will we uphold these standards when AI comes in to bear? So I want to replace garbage in, garbage out in your mind, and I want you to start thinking about, well, what would it look like if we took a quality in, quality out approach, where the data was accurate, complete, aligned, and unbiased because it had been vetted by experts? That then when we put a model on top of it to process, and we do effective fine-tuning and enhance the context that's provided to the engine so that it can personalize the guidance to someone, then we can have the utmost confidence, not only in our professional standards, but that the answers they're receiving have high fidelity, and we don't have to say, please check this for accuracy. There are not errors in this circumstance. So at TalentTelligent, we feel credible to speak on this approach because we built the world's largest evidence-based AI database of talent development content. To date, there are over 20,000 research-based development tips, 15 million words behind the scenes of that of supporting content that's been crafted over 45 years by IO psychologists, PhDs in our field, vetted by third parties, and tested in the real world. The website, AI Talent Solutions, .talenttelligent.com. Please visit there if you'd like to see our application of AI inside of our tools. It's an important place to be able to scan. So last couple of points here. I want to encourage you to shift your mindset, right? I don't see AI as a replacement. I see it as an augmenter, right? We want the tools to have exciting features, but I would encourage you to say, I want exciting features, but I must have a source behind the scenes that matters. That we don't want to have FOMO, the fear of missing out, which drives us to move too quickly and make rash decisions. We want to challenge the approach for maximum quality and fidelity, which means critical partnership is more important than just blind trust and moving very quickly. So as you vet your options in the marketplace, there's 4 super high level, obviously not all-inclusive questions that we would challenge you to ask. The first, and your IT partners can help you on this, the engine. How secure and tested is this LLM engine? When our employees put questions in, when they maybe even upload their 360 assessments, where does that data go? Is it being used to train the model, or is it just being used to help coach the person? Is it safe and securely held? The database. Is the database curated, vetted, and trusted content? And how do we know, right? Fine-tuning isn't enough here. And then as we dive deeper into the data, we know that the developmental needs of an intern are very different from a first-time manager, which we know are very different than somebody in the C-suite or someone in our high potential program or someone working collaboratively in complex teams. Does the database cover the needs across the career arc and then cover all the aspects of development? Can our employees ask questions about what does it look like behaviorally, to be successful in demonstrating systems thinking? What does it look like if it's done poorly? How would I measure my progress in terms of trying to develop this? Can I dive into neuroscience or just even ask the question, why is this important as a manager? We want to ensure that the depth of coverage is as deep as it is wide across the spectrum of the career arc. So I thank you so much for your time. We are going to take a moment and answer some questions in the chat panel. If we're unable to get to those questions, I will certainly send you an email as a follow-up, because we'll want to make sure that we've crossed all those off the list. So please visit us at TalentTelligent.com, follow us on LinkedIn, and we look forward to continuing to engage with you as a trusted partner. Thank you.